Confession time. We cheated a little with these guides when it came to Resolve. Since Resolve is many things to many people, a DI pipeline tool, a nonlinear editor, and a dedicated color grading system, we decided to treat each of these as a separate application, so to speak. So instead of one 30-minute guide, we have 3. But we still want to get you up and running in each of these tasks by the time you're done watching the guide that matches your needs. In this first guide, we're going to cover the boring but important stuff, using Resolve as a pipeline tool. In studios across the world, people depend on Resolve to safely transcode their media, especially when working with high-resolution digital film content. It can be more efficient to transcode to smaller intermediate movie files for use during editing. Let's start with a quick overview. Resolve has 4 pages: Media, Edit, Color, and Deliver. We're concerned right now with the Media page, since that's the page you use to import and do most of your file management. Before you import a single clip, you need to make sure you capture real IDs for each source media you import. This is important if you plan to create dailies in Resolve for another editing system and then return to Resolve to grade the high-resolution originals. From the File menu, open the Project Settings. In the Master Project Settings Conform options, make sure you enable the option to assist using real names and then embedding in the source clip file section. These 2 options are critical for linking between the dailies you create in Resolve and the original high-resolution files. Okay, now we can continue importing our clips. A nice thing about Resolve is that it leaves file management up to you. You put source video files wherever you want them, and Resolve just links to them. At top left is the Media Storage Browser, with a list of storage drives connected to your system. You can drill down into their subdirectories by clicking the disclosure arrow. The contents are displayed in the pane to the right. If there's a directory you'll visit often, right-click it and choose Add Folder to Favorites. Favorites appear at the bottom of the Media Storage Browser. Right now, none of the media is actually in your project. This is the time in every DI workflow where you should create a copy of the original media as a safe backup. Resolve has a built-in clone tool for that. At the top of the media page, click the clone tool in the interface toolbar to open the clone panel. Here, you click the Add Job button and drag the entire compact flash, SD camera card, or folder of media to the source area. Then, drag the backup hard drive or folder icon to the destination area. You can drag in multiple destinations if you want to create multiple copies to different backup locations. Clicking the Clone button will begin creating the backups. When the copies are complete, a checksum report is created and saved at the root level of each destination drive. The checksum report is a way to confirm that you've made a complete and accurate copy without any errors. After you create backups, it's time to add clips to your project. To add clips and their hierarchical folders to the project, right-click and choose Add Folder and Subfolder into Media Pool. Create bins. All the clips are added, creating bins based on the same folder structure that exists in the operating system. You can preview clips by hovering the mouse over their thumbnails and dragging left and right. You might want to increase the size of the thumbnails using the slider at top right of the pane to better see the previewed media. Or select one of the thumbnails and it'll appear in the larger preview window where you can scrub through or play back the clip.
We're trying to have a second child, and they were having some trouble, and so
Shift S enables or disables audio scrubbing. To create new bins to help organize your media, just right-click and choose Add Bin. You can then just drag clips from the library browser into the bin below. When you select a clip, metadata appears in the Metadata Inspector to the right. You can choose to display just a subset of metadata fields or everything in one rather lengthy scrollable list. Whatever metadata Resolve finds attached to the imported files will be filled in, but you can easily add your own. Type keywords to identify unique features of a clip, or enter information like shot type. Now, in other editing applications, you typically make multiple bins to organize your footage in very specific ways. In Resolve, that's not really necessary and can actually make it more difficult to browse your media. Why is it unnecessary? Because of Smart Bins. Right-click in the Smart Bins section and choose Add Smart Bin. Resolve opens a dialog window. Now let's say we want to isolate just the shots pertaining to scene 51. We'll name the Smart Bin accordingly, then scroll through the metadata list to find scene contains 51. Now we have a bin that contains only the shots from scene 51. The great thing about Smart Bins is that they're dynamically populated, so any new clip with metadata in the scene field set to 51 will be added to this Smart Bin automatically. Note that the footage remains in whichever of the standard bins we previously imported into for organization. These Smart Bins just provide another convenient way to group media by specific metadata. Think of them as permanent search results. Now on larger projects, footage seems to multiply like obsolete computer gear. So Resolve includes an uglier but sometimes more helpful spreadsheet view. Right-click on the header column to add or remove metadata fields, and you can save that layout as a custom view that you can recall later. Before you get anything else done in Resolve, you really need to set up color management, which is located under the File menu in the project settings. Now, color management's a bit of a dark art, so we're pretty much going to avoid the details entirely here. The good news is that the Blackmagic engineers understand it, so you don't have to. In the project settings, make sure the Master Project Settings section is selected. And in the Color Science pop-up menu, you'll want to choose DaVinci ACES. ACES stands for Academy Color Encoding Specification and is a future-proofed industry standard. This gives you what's called scene-referred color management. If you're comfortable color correcting in log space, you might want to choose one of the other options, but for the most part, the DaVinci ACES setting is the best and most accurate choice. Here's an extremely oversimplified summary of what's going on. Video files come in all kinds of different color spaces and have different contrast curves called gamma curves applied to them. Trying to combine them in their native state is something like trying to build a house with some materials measured in imperial inches and others measured in metric centimeters. The results wouldn't be pretty. So when you choose DaVinci Color Managed or one of the other ACES options, Resolve automatically removes the different color spaces on the imported images and flattens out their gamma curves so that you can work with them all on an even playing field. Then when you're all done working with the images, it reapplies the appropriate color space settings on the way out. Now look, if you find yourself with a couple of spare years, by all means head to college for a master's in color science. Otherwise, simply enjoy the hard labor of the many clever people who've made scene-referred color management possible. Of course, like all good things in life, it's not quite that easy. Before you leave the project settings, you need to set the input and output color spaces from the color management section. The ACES input transform tells Resolve what color space it should be removing when it manages your color. You'll set this to the color space of the footage you're working with. For example, in this shot, we're working with blackmagic.mov files recorded in the Blackmagic color space. The ACES output transform tells Resolve what transformation it should apply when rendering files back out to disk or displaying on your reference monitor. We'll set that to the HD Rec 709 standard. Alternately, for a purely linear pipeline, you can leave the output set to No Output Transform and choose a LUT for your display in either the 1D or 3D monitor lookup table. This is a more advanced setup for people who want to export linear EXRs to use elsewhere. Now, if that's not you, and you'll know it's not you because you're really confused right now, just leave the LUTs alone and set the output space to match your final output color space. If that's for the small screen, you'll most likely want Rec. 709. A quick aside, the input transform will only be applied to non-RAW video. Any RAW video, like Red RAW or Cinema DNG, will automatically be demosaicked to linear space based on its metadata. And that's all you need to do to set up color management. However, if some of your clips were captured from a different camera, you can change the input color transform on a per-clip basis. Just select the clip that came from a different camera source, right-click and choose Input Color Space. Then select the appropriate color space from the list. You can also override the default RAW settings for a RAW file by right-clicking and choosing Camera RAW Codec Settings and selecting the appropriate edit command. Now, there are all kinds of other nifty features for working with bins, including using variables and metadata import, but you can discover those as the need arises. Let's take a look at the other major task you'll be performing here in the media page, and that's audio sync. If your audio, like the clip we have here, was captured on a professional audio recorder, you'll need to sync up that file with the corresponding video file. There are 3 ways to do that. First up is timecode sync. For productions where the audio recorder was timecode slave synced to match video timecode, Resolve can automatically match sound to picture. Just dump all the media into one bin, you can reorganize it later, then right-click the bin and choose Auto Sync Audio based on timecode. And bam, your sync work is done. Resolve replaces the original clip audio with a reference link to the higher quality sound recorder track. Non-destructively, of course. Or you can choose Auto Sync Audio based on timecode and append tracks to keep the existing camera audio and add the new source in addition. Of course, in these days of new school run-and-gun filmmaking, you're just as likely to end up with no matching timecode. If the camera was at least capturing on-set audio, either through a line feed or the in-camera microphone, Resolve can sync based on the audio waveforms. Just choose Auto Sync Audio based on waveform, and Resolve will batch sync the video, replacing the original camera audio with the dedicated sound recorder's audio. Again, you can use the Append Tracks option to keep the existing camera audio if so desired. Now, if all else fails, you can manually sync the audio. First, make sure the audio pane's open at the top right and switch to the waveform view. Select the video clip to load it into the viewer and move the playhead to a visual cue matching an impact sound, hopefully a clapboard slate was used at the leader of the shot. And then select the audio clip you want to sync to, and it should appear in the waveform view. Move the waveform playhead to preview and align with the impact point. You can use the left and right arrow keys to nudge the position. When you're happy that the visual and waveform playheads are both positioned at the same moment in time, click the Link/Unlink button at the lower right of the audio view. Play back the video to make sure sync is correct. And if it's not, this goes for any of the sync methods, temporarily unlink the clips by clicking the Link/Unlink icon, shift the audio with the left and right arrow keys, and then click to relock the sync. Now, commonly you'll end up with multiple audio channels, and you'll only want to work with a couple of them. Right-click on the clip and choose Clip Attributes. Here on the Audio tab, you can choose whether the sources should be treated as stereo, mono, surround, or multi-mono. You can also decide how many audio tracks you want the clip to contain when you edit in a timeline. For each audio track, you can select if it contains the original video clip's embedded audio or the new linked audio. You can also mute the tracks you don't want available when editing or exporting. One thing files like to do is move around your hard drive. Well, it seems like that anyway. If you change directory names or move files to a different drive for work at a different location, there's a good chance Resolve won't know where to find them and they'll go offline. Alternately, you may have been working with low-res proxy clips and want to switch to the original full-resolution media ready for color correction. Resolve has some solid tools for relinking media, and most of the time the process is pretty painless. Start by selecting the clips you want to relink. Now, right-click on one of the selected clips. There are two options related to relinking: Relink Selected Clips and Change Source Folder. Choose Change Source Folder if the directory structure hasn't changed and you've simply moved all your media from one drive location to another. Just select the new source folder and you're good to go. If things have been moved all over the place, you'll want to choose Relink Selected Clips to have Resolve search inside different subdirectories to find where each clip is moved. Choose the top-level directory in which to search for the media. Okay, now that you know how to get your assets into Resolve and organize them, let's take a look at how to move media around and transcode it into another format. There are actually two methods for working with media in Resolve: the Media Management window and the Deliver page. Let's take a look at each in turn. The layout of the Media Management window is quite simple. First, choose whether you want to work with all media in your entire project, media in your selected timelines, or selected clips. Next, choose whether to copy media, in other words, create duplicate versions, move media, removing the media from its original location, or transcode media, changing the format and codec. We'll look here at the options for the entire project. The options are fairly similar if choosing timelines or clips. First, let's look at copying. Choose whether to copy all media in the project or only used media. If you're conforming a project that's already edited, you'll probably want to choose to copy only used media, as this will save you from filling up your hard drive with unneeded files. Additionally, if the picture is almost locked, choose Copy and Trim. You can add handles in case you need to slip your edits by a few frames later, but this will only copy the portions of the media files being used in your edits, reducing the size of your storage requirements even more. An estimate of the resulting file size appears at lower right compared to the original media footprint at left. Now there's an important option tucked away in the More Options section. Select Relink to New Files, and Resolve will automatically relink your timelines to the newly copied media. Choose a destination folder and you're ready to go. The move options are almost identical. Use at your own risk though. If you choose to delete unused media in the More Options here, there's no going back. Transcode again has the same basic options, but adds the ability to specify new format and codec options. Note that you can't choose a color space here. That still gets managed in the project settings and will require a trip to the Deliver page, which we'll get into in a moment, to bake a new color profile into the transcoded media. Now, if you choose a format with optional settings like H.264, these settings will appear directly below. Select Render at Source Resolution for a straight size conversion, or select a new resolution from the list. Note that you have the option of choosing a custom resolution here too. Then we have the audio section with the typical basic settings. And that's it. Click Start, and Media Management gets to work transcoding, copying, or moving your media. Okay, now let's take a look at the slightly more elaborate Deliver page. First, switch over to the Edit tab and start by selecting all the clips you want to transcode in the media pool. Drag them into a timeline and snap them to the first frame. Now that all the clips are added to the timeline, head over to the Deliver page. Resolve includes some presets for common workflows such as delivery to YouTube or Vimeo, but we'll focus on the custom options here. First, choose the location for the destination transcoded media. Next, choose between a single clip render or individual clips. If you're exporting a complete and edited timeline, you'll typically want the single clip option. If you're batch transcoding to create proxies, you want an individual clip for each source file. Now choose the export format. Here, we'll use the example of converting our raw source to QuickTime ProRes. The advanced settings are particularly useful to ensure you get the best possible transcoded media. To work with the original source media, leave Use Optimized Media and Use Render Cached Images deselected. If you've performed some test color correction on your clips and want to bypass it for the transcode, set Enable Flat Pass to Always On. Note that this won't remove any color management you've set up in Resolve. To make sure your clips are exported with the same color space as the source media, you'll need to disable Managed Color by returning color science to DaVinci YRGB in the Master Project settings. For creating the highest quality proxies, check Disable Edit and Input Sizing, Force Sizing to Highest Quality, and Force Debayer to Highest Quality. One final piece of the advanced settings, Timecode Window Burn. Now you actually set up the metadata burn-in options in the color page, but here in the advanced settings, you decide whether to burn them into the exported files or not. Next, a quick stop in the audio section where you can choose the codec, bit depth, and channels. And finally, we reach the Files section. Here you can create a custom name using the built-in variable system, which, alas, is beyond the scope of this survival guide. Check the manual for details. If you're just looking to transcode to the same name as the source video file, select Source Name. The rest of the options here are for dealing with image sequence numbering and padding, subfolders, and rendering multiple versions of the same source clip. Again, if you need any of those things, dig into the manual for clarification. When you're ready to go, just click Add to Render Queue, and then on the right side of the screen in the render queue, click Start Render to get going. Oh, and throw an extra couple of graphics cards into your system. That'll speed up your render a lot. And that's a whirlwind tour of the pipeline side of Resolve. There are all kinds of other bells and whistles that we didn't have space to cover. Automatic scene detection, fine-tuning camera raw settings, proxies and optimized media, easy DCP, the list goes on. But you now understand the basics of getting media into, through, and out of Resolve. For everything else, there's Resolve's concise and well-written user guide.